There's a lot I could talk about.
Hi, everybody. We are ready to get started. I just wanted to welcome everyone to the August Nature Connections. We're going to be talking about fall planting and seed collecting. Just some housekeeping items. As Patty's presenting for the first 30 minutes, we just ask that you hold your questions, and then we will save the last 30 minutes for any Q&A.
Hi there, everybody. Hope everybody's staying cool right now. We are in a garden in front of the house that has not really been tended a lot this year, but it has a lot of seeds that are ready. And so since our subject today is seed collecting and then fall planting, I thought we would start up here where there are some seeds to collect. That being said, if you look around, probably better behind, if we turn around that way, you can see that there's still a lot of things blooming out here too. Of course, in most cases, when things are still blooming, it's not time to collect those. But in this case, I'm going to point to this plant right here, which is downy skullcap. This one you do collect. There may still be some flowers on this plant. I'm going to go ahead and cut some. I brought some things. I'm going to cut this one though that doesn't have any blooms on it, just because I know it's going to have more seeds. But once these dry out, these little things which have the seeds in them, they pop open and the seeds fall out. So if you wait too long with these, you will miss all the seeds. So a big part of seed collecting for native plants is really understanding when seeds are ready and when to collect. That being said, when I started collecting seeds, I didn't know. I just did it through trial and error. So if you ever have any questions about that, I'd be happy to tell you, what my experience with that plant, if I have any, is. But this one's downy skullcap, and you can start to collect that when it's still blooming, because these will fall off. I should open one of these up. Oh, see, I opened it up wrong and it fell out. But yeah, these things open up and there's a tiny little round black seed. I think you can see that. That's why I brought this bowl, so we could see seeds. Each of these has a couple of seeds in it. You can see there's two little round seeds. Anyway, we'll get a lot of seeds off of this one because it bloomed a lot. I also brought with me a bag. So a lot of times collecting in the right container is really important. These seeds would be fine to collect in a paper sack like this, just a plain old paper lunch sack. We almost always use paper because if this would sit in the sun, it's not going to roast those seeds. Any moisture is not going to be collected in there and kill everything that we put in there. So collecting in a paper sack like this is great, as long as the seeds are not teeny tiny seeds. When I didn't realize that these actually are not always glued very well, and teeny tiny seeds will fall out these little folds. So just kind of be aware, and we're going to show you some examples of some really tiny seeds that we wouldn't want to put in a sack like this. And I have some other paper envelopes that I'll show you that I use for collecting that are bigger. And also I do collect sometimes in plastic just because it makes sense for the teeny tiny seeds, but there's kind of some rules we follow when we do that. Okay, so that is downy skullcap, an example of one that you collect when it's could be collected while it's still blooming. Now this one, a lot of people will probably recognize, is an echinacea. This is pale purple coneflower. So the pale purple coneflower and earlier coneflowers, purple coneflower is a little bit later. But the earlier coneflowers should be totally done right now. And the goldfinches are all over them and they're ready to collect. And I'm not going to do anything or show you where the seeds are because it will hurt my fingers. They're very pokey. In fact, did you know echinacea is a reference to a hedgehog? which is all about this pokey thing. So I'm just going to take this with me so that hopefully we can look at the seeds here in a minute. I'm going to take another one just in case the seeds aren't in there. Let's try this one. A lot of times the goldfinches will clean them out and I can see a seed right in there and see the top of it. Some of these are flower parts. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get done with this. All right. All right, so that is that. Put my things away
And I have an extra hand if you need one.
she's gonna hold those. Not the apple, we're gonna leave the apple here. Let's go over here and talk about this plant. This is another plant. This is New Jersey tea. And these little things right here are where the seeds used to be. There are no seeds left on this plant. So a lot of times, you kind of have to know if a plant lets go of seeds at a certain time. So this is the later of the two New Jersey tea species. This is Ceanothus americanus. So its seeds are really, some of them are still on, but this one has lost every single one of its seeds. There's an earlier one, Ceanothus herbaceus, and that one, there's no chance you would ever find any seeds on it at this point in the season. So it's not a really explosive one, but it does just fall right off if anything hits it. And a lot of times you'll just see those and they're all gone. This one, everybody is probably familiar with. This is butterfly milkweed or Asclepias tuberosa. It has lots of seeds on it and ones that have already opened, like there's no seed there. That's just the thing that the seed travels on. So this is wind dispersed seeds. Here's a seed stuck in there. All right, so we don't want to really collect this one when it's already open like this, because if you've ever cleaned this inside, you would know, or even when you're sweaty, you would know that it's a disaster because this stuff is everywhere and everywhere, literally. So what we look for when we're collecting any kind of milkweed or the Asclepias species, we don't want them to look like this. We don't want to see this open like that already. Although that being said, I probably could get those off because we want to be able to slide seeds off those without getting, we just want them to go like that. We want to be able to just pull them off. Okay. So there's a way to do that. And I'm going to put all my things down so I have both my hands. This is tricky. So we're looking for the exact right ripeness of seed pod. So something about like that kind of yellow, looks like it's just about ready to pop open. Sometimes you can just press on it and it'll pop. That one didn't do it. These little bugs are milkweed bugs and they actually eat seeds. So a lot of times if you see one that one's good. So see it just popped real easy. So I'm gonna pull
the camera for the color.
So yeah, and I just popped it. Look, you can see that seam opened up like that. All right, now this is not easy, but you get the hang of it after you do it for a while, and I don't do it very often. So forgive me if I totally mess it up. So I'm pulling it by the silks out of here. And there's this cone left on here like that. And if I hold on real tight to the silks, I should be able to slide those off without getting hardly any silk. Oops, it's starting to move. That is what you're going to try to do for that. And then anything that gets fluffy, we call it fluffy, we put it in a different bag. And those are the ones that we throw around for seeds, or if I give to people so that they can put in their gardens. So I'm just going to throw it back there because I'd love to have a bunch here. So see, there's nothing but a couple left. Oh, wait, there's a few. They'll just pour right out. pour right out in there. Okay, but I don't want the silks in there for sure. Okay, so that is Asclepias. Like any kind of milkweed is that same kind of process. So if you have spider milkweed, that one's probably done. This one is kind of going right now, but you can see it's still blooming. So we'll keep getting new seed capsules on this again and again throughout the season. This one, if I go ahead and collect it now, sorry, I'm in collecting mode here. I'm going to try this one. You can never have enough of these.
You got 4 more minutes.
Yeah, 4 more minutes. Okay. Didn't get that one. Darn. Yep. So sometimes it just doesn't work. It's too far gone. Okay, so milkweeds are like that. Common milkweed is getting ready now, so you'll start to see it. A lot of times I'm just going to look around with the milkweeds, and when I start to see those poofs, then I know it's time for me to start looking for good ones. Okay, so Monardas, like the bee balms, that's another one that is probably ready right now to collect. We're going to talk about this little grass here. I'm going to collect off of this, one of my favorite Monardas. There is a bowl that I'm going to use and show you. Whenever I collect Monardas, I keep the head standing up, because if I don't, and I turn it over and they're old, see that those little round things there? Those are the seeds. And they're falling out of this as I turned it over, because each of these is a little tube, and it's down, the seeds are down at the bottom of the tubes. So they will just fall right out if I turn it over. And this is a perfect time because they're not falling out. I put them in the bag upside down. And a lot of times I'm just seeing all the seeds fall out through the season into the bottom of a bag. But see how small those are? I might not want to collect Monarda in that paper sack that we saw. We might want to put that in something else. And I'll show you what kind of container. One other plant, 2 other plants up here. One is this wild petunia that you see all around here. Here's a faded flower on one. This one pops and throws its seeds everywhere. So you cannot like collect the seeds. You just cut the plant down a little bit and throw that whole thing into a paper sack, and you'll hear it snap. I just heard one snap behind me. You can hear them snap, but they'll do that in the bags, and you'll hear the seeds hit the bags, the insides of the bags. So that's a good one to collect right now, so you don't get wild petunia where you don't want wild petunia. Grasses, some of the grasses, even the warm season grasses, are ready to be collected now. Most of them are not, but this one is blue grama grass, and like this one is still in flower. Those are the little anthers. So all the pollen is on there, so it's still in flower. Those are the male parts of the flower. But you will find some on here, because I saw them before, that are done flowering. I thought it was just, oh, here it is. And so see how full that looks? It's all furry. So it's starting to be ready to collect. So that one's about done. But this one over here, I got to show you one that, oh, here, this is perfectly ready. It's brown, and those are the seeds in there. So see, they fall out like that. But when all the seeds have fallen out, it looks totally different. So if you come up to this plant, there's one, and you see this, so you can see that one's empty and that one's not. See, that's got a lot of seeds in it. This has no seeds in it. So sometimes knowing kind of just what it looks like is a good thing too. But some of the grasses can be kind of tricky. If you don't really know, I would wait a little bit longer since there's still stuff in flower, and then just cut all that off and stick it in a bag. And you should get some seeds out of that. All right, how are we on time?
We're at 15. So if you want to sit down and do a little more on this, it'll cut the bed part short, but that'll be okay.
So seed collecting happens constantly in this garden. Oh, you might take a look over there. See these? These are ready too. These are baptisias. Um, and you don't want to wait very long on baptisia because there's a bug that gets in them and eats your seeds. See, they're full of seeds. Yeah, so they'll pop open. We did not talk about legumes like that one. We were going to talk about purple prairie clover. That's another one. The prairie clovers are like the purple one and the white one are ready to collect right now, or getting ready. But if you don't scarify them, you're not actually seeing the seed. You are seeing the kind of the dead flower parts, and you have to rub that off to get that to germinate. But we can talk about that when we talk about seed starting in a future one of these nature connections. Okay, so I wanted to show you, we talked about just the paper sack and why it might not be a good thing to put something like a Monarda in because of those tiny seeds. And these aren't even the tiniest seeds. These guys right here, these envelopes with bottoms like this, they're excellent because they don't have those big folds. And you can collect your Monardas and a lot of really small seeds in here and not have to worry about things falling out because they're glued really well. So coin envelopes, if you're just doing a little bit, it's good. Or you can get these manila envelopes and they work great too. So we collect in these a lot. We also sometimes collect in plastic. Now, these are some very old seeds from American bellflower or tall bellflower, because tall bellflower has insanely tiny seeds. See them in there? They're just like powder. It's full. So all I did was collect this and put it upside down in this old sack that's been around forever. But if I had put that in any other thing, might not have been able to capture those seeds. If I do it in plastic, that's fine, as long as that plastic bag doesn't get sealed. Now, this one's really old. It's been around. It's got a hole in it. Not a big deal. But if I seal that, then I'm sealing any moisture that's in this plant, and that's going to kill the seeds. So you don't want to close a plastic sack after you collect. Sometimes what I do is I'll put if I've got paper, say I go out and collect really fast and all I have is paper, I'll put the paper sack inside of a plastic sack just so that it catches anything that falls out. Or opposite, if I have plastic and I'm afraid it might get hot, I might put it inside of a paper sack to shade it. But I just have to make sure that the plastic stays open. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about seed collecting or any questions you have when we get finished talking about the planting. But I did want to just mention berries or things like this that have a real fleshy outside. Put those in your refrigerator. Make sure that they stay nice and moist. This one's been left on the counter too long, but this is actually Jack in the Pulpit. If you're out in the woods and you see something that looks like that, you're looking at Jack in the Pulpit or Green Dragon. Awesome. Okay. I love seed collecting. It's super fun. Okay. Fall is really my favorite time to plant because I don't like to work really hard. I really want to be able to put it in the ground and then not really have to care for it very much. And that's kind of why I like fall planting, is because I'm going to put things in the ground. And then winter's going to happen. And winter, nothing really is there for me to do. It's just going to do its thing. And hopefully I put it in the ground by September, October, November. And it's had a little bit of time before a really hard frost happened to put some roots in the ground, which helps keep it from heaving and coming out and getting killed. You'll see around here some brand new beds that I have been working on just in the last couple weeks for fall planting. So we open for sales this Saturday, and thankfully next week it's going to be lots cooler. It's going to be perfect weather for starting to plant things. Obviously, it's still a little warm, and it's going to keep doing that. So in warm times, if I've planted something, I'm going to have to care for it a little bit. but I'm also using thick mulch. Now you always hear, don't do thick mulch, right? That's later. So in the first few couple 2 years probably of a planting, I always use a little bit of mulch. I don't really want there to be bare soil around plants that aren't covering the soil. The plants are going to shade each other when it all grows in. But if I'm letting the soil be exposed very much, unless it's something like prickly pear cactus, I might be really asking my plant not to be very happy. Hopefully it wouldn't die anyway, but I'm not a very good gardener. I don't take very good care of things, actually. So I really like this fall planting because it helps me be really successful in those first couple of years. This is an example of how we solved a mowing problem. So right here next to our sale area, we had this little line that went down, and I couldn't ever mow. And my mower I'd have to trim all around here with a weed eater, and it just took forever. So we thought, oh, we'll just make a little garden here. So we just prepped this probably, I don't know, within the last week. And if it's gotten watered, because we water the trees that are up here, so it's gotten some water. If I look at this end, it's probably still cardboard, hard. But if I look over here, it might be a little wetter because it got more water. Nope, still cardboard. So that's only a week. If over here where we made another garden, we did the same thing. Really deep mulch on top of cardboard. After we scalped any vegetation that was there, we want to get as much of that gone as we can. We put cardboard down after we get the tape off. And then we put really thick mulch on. This one was probably 2-3 weeks ago. And I'm digging way down here. And that is the cardboard, but I can stick my finger right through it. That's the way I want these beds to be when I start to plant them. So it's thick mulch, and that is fine because it's going to need this for the winter to protect it. And that's probably going to last me 2 years. I'm not going to have to mess with that very much at all before the spring. This looks like a dead plant, right? But it's not. It's got Patti obovata in it that bloomed, which really kind of takes a lot of energy out of the plant. But it's also got some new pieces that are spreading from that. And we're going to plant this with some spring kind of shade plants because I don't really have a lot up here. And you can see it's still growing, looks good in the pot. So I'm going to plant this Patti right here because that's what's going to be in this garden, Patti and Phlox varicata. If you have a shade garden, that is a wonderful way to start with because you get a lot of color in the spring. So it's super easy to plant into a prepped garden like this. And really, if you use water, it's only going to take you maybe 3 weeks to get it ready. And you have until the hard frost, really, to get stuff in the ground. So I honestly have planted in December because I'm just that way, and I'll have plants around and I'll be like, well, you're not going to survive in that pot. So I'm trying to hit the soil level about the same. I've moved the mulch back a little bit. I'm going to move it back up right to the edge of this plant, but I don't want to cover the plant. And I bet you that's going to grow like crazy. So that's Patti obovata. That's my first plant in this garden. And I will probably take every ugly pot we have and put it right here. And next year it'll be gorgeous. So fall planting for me is the best. I've all the gardens down here were done in the fall. And trying to think, that one up there was done in the spring. The one at the top of the hill that we were in. But we end up in the fall planting a lot of the pots that don't sell or that we can't use. I mean, we just don't think they look good in retail. So we use kind of the ugly plants in these gardens, and they just seem to really love it when we put them in the ground. So it's kind of one of those concepts that, you know, maybe if they're starved in the pot, they're very, very happy to start to grow once they get into the ground. And that seems to be working here pretty well as long as I water plants, which is my problem. I don't water plants. Okay. How much time do we have?
So just a few minutes, so it's enough
Just-
time to transition. You can get a
Okay.
drink and we can do Q&A. So
Okay.
let me flip this around. So we're gonna let Patty get a drink. It's really hot out. And we're gonna switch to the camera for the Q&A part. So we'll be right back on in 1 second.
Okay, here we are. Hello, it's good to see your faces. I didn't get to see anybody's face while I was talking. How is everyone? Good, yes. Staying out of the heat, yay. Good. All right. Did you all have any questions for me after my really rapid talk through seed collecting and planting? No?
I have a question, Patty.
Yes?
This is Andy.
Hi,
Hi.
Andy.
Hi. I was wondering if you, so I have an area that's an actual untilled prairie, like a remnant prairie, and I was wondering, should we be doing the same? I mean, I understand like to share seeds, this would be really useful, but should we also, like for this area, be redistributing the native seeds that we find? Is that a useful way to help the prairie?
I think so. I think, you know, if you have remnant prairie, that I think what we run into here, and especially right now, because people are getting very, very interested in restoring and using native plants, that the genetics in the plants that we might be purchasing, for instance, I have genetics for the butterfly milkweed that you saw in my garden. That comes from somewhere, I don't know where. I think some of the seeds I bought in the beginning were from Prairie Moon. So that's probably more like Wisconsin. And then I find, butterfly milkweed or that Asclepias tuberosa that we're playing with the milkweed seeds. I found some out in my prairie, and it is a totally different color than that one. And it actually has a little bit different growth habit, and it's very, very robust. So the genetics do matter. I mean, they don't necessarily, it's not a make or break, but if you are restoring prairie and natural areas, it is much, much better to be using local seeds and locally sourced seeds. So the landowners that we know around here that allow us to collect seeds, for instance, this little Jack in the Pulpit came from a woodland down the street. This is a really good thing for me to be able to propagate for people here. These do take 2 years to germinate, so I probably won't see them for a while, but um, it's one of those things that, yes, if you can share seeds, if you have native prairie and can share seeds, I think getting the local genetics into people's hands around here will do not only, these gardeners a lot of good to have a more robust plant, a plant that really enjoys this weather, this systems that are in place around here, but also the insects that rely on them are going to be finding the genetics they're expecting. So that's just my take on it. There's a lot of reading out there that you can do to learn about that. I'm not an entomologist, but my sense is that the more that we can plant the things that the rest of the world that lives around us rely on, that they're expecting to see, the better we're serving this area. Does that answer your question, Andy? Probably.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Hi, Patty. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
This is Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Listen, the question I have for you has to do with whether, in your experience, there are any particular good garden species that do not do as well when planted in the fall than they would in the spring.
You know, I haven't followed it very well.
I'm kind of a random planter, but I really haven't got a sense that that makes a ton of difference.
Okay.
Could be wrong, but that hasn't been my experience. I haven't had, but again, you know, if you've been tracking that and have found that to happen, that just might be my random nature of putting things in whenever I have them and doing the best I can to get things to grow. So I haven't seen really any difference myself, though.
Okay. Now, and another question, when you plant in the fall,
Hmm.
do you enrich the soil at all?
Not usually. I'm really bad about just planting into whatever soil's there. Um, it's, you know, that's a big question. I think my I think it would be nice if the soil was not just a clay bowl, you know, that's probably something to avoid, you know, if you can break that up some, but if
Yeah.
I don't really myself do much amendment, I might even be, I, this behind me right here, there's a little garden along this was planted on top of the remnants of a gravel driveway. And it grew great. I mean, but I had
Yep.
thrown compost on it, you know, and just the year before that, I threw compost on top of the cardboard, and then just plant it right into that. So, I don't have any recommendations for anything other than avoid a clay bowl. I would not plant into that. That is probably going to hurt almost any plant you put it in.
Well,
Put
I live on a clay hill, so I've got a problem.
Right, so do I. You know, this one up here, if it's not a clay bowl, then it's just big chunks of clay around the plant. So, you know, if you run into something like that, you probably need to do a little bit of work to make sure that there's a little more better structure there. Um, yeah. Okay, so hopefully that doesn't really help much because I'm really mean to plants. I truly am. I just really want them to live. And so I have a lot of them and I get a lot of tries. Um, does anybody else have any experience with amendments on the call? No. One thing I have used before, but only in pots, I haven't used it in the garden, is a product called Myco Bloom. Um, and
Hmm.
that was helpful with legumes like Amorpha canescens, the lead plant. It really did make a difference for that. So it's a arbuscular mycorrhizal fungus or something like that. I can't even remember how you say the word, but it really did help that legume. So I think some of the more conservative plants might benefit from some um, some of the rhizobiums and the fungus organisms that they are used to relying on in prairies.
Can you get that locally?
I bought Mycobloom online from she's a researcher, Liz Kojal, used to be, I think she did some research with KU. But yeah, I think you can get it through her site.
Okay.
And the rhizobium that um let's see, let me think about this. Yes, the rhizobium comes, yes, this is right. With the like Prairie Moon will sell rhizobium that's specific to different legumes.
Well,
Um, yeah,
really?
so you can actually purchase from places like Prairie Moon, which is
Okay.
not local, right?
Right.
And that does make a difference. It really does.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, hi, Pat.
Hi, I just want to know what kind of mulch you use, or
This
does it matter?
I don't like dyed mulches, but I don't know that it matters. The mulch that I use is the grossest mulch you could buy. Honestly, it's the roughest stuff ever. Mostly because I'm not, it's more just to help that cardboard breakdown. I have used straw before, but it doesn't last long enough. Honestly, the nice thing about this mulch is it also controls erosion a little bit. It doesn't tend to wash very badly. I did like straw though, because of the lightness. So if I get some rotted straw, because we use straw as an insulation for when we winterize plants, a lot of times we'd have straw and we use it for different things around here. And it'll stay out and weather in the sprinklers, and by the end of the season, it's nice and crumbly. It makes a really nice thing to lay over cardboards. It just doesn't last very long. I've also used hay, but that comes with its own issues. Say somebody has Johnson grass in their hay, you might not want to use that.
Or Ceresia.
Or Ceresia lespedeza. Yeah, that one, that would be bad. But I've tried a little bit of everything and had lots of problems. But generally, it's just knowing where things come from is a good idea. Straw is generally the wheat, and there may be chemicals on it, but I haven't seen after it weathers outside that affects things very much.
Hi, this is Cassie Blakely.
Hi, Cassie.
Hi. Hey, okay, so you use really gross mulch. Where do you get your really gross mulch from?
This I used to get it from, because we're in Leavenworth County. I used to get it from the county. This mulch that we have right now is from Missouri Organic.
Oh, I've heard of that. I've seen them.
Yeah, it's just their erosion control mulch, which has gigantic pieces in it, like big chunks. So it's not pretty, and it's not always easy to use, but I can get it really inexpensively and have a big pile around for a long time. Which, having space for a big pile of mulch is another problem to solve, right? But yeah, I think any kind of mulch though is fine. I just like the most natural kind of thing that I can find. And in this case, this was the really, really rough stuff that comes from Missouri Organic.
Since she was asking.
Thank you.
About chip draw.
Oh yeah,
some sources through Johnson County, they have free.
Yeah, a lot of the counties have free stuff, but Mel just mentioned chip drop. I could do chip drop, but since we have gates here, they can't just come and drop. They have to schedule that with me, and I think that's a problem for them. But chip drop is something that I know a lot of people have used. They can sometimes drop a lot of mulch, a lot, yeah, maybe more than you anticipate. But that I have used just mulch that when we had the trees done around here, it was a gigantic pile and it had leaves in it and everything, but it really worked well. It was really good. So a lot of different things, but I'd say the more natural it is, the better. So that's just my opinion though.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody have any questions about planting in the fall? Like, does anybody do that regularly as opposed to spring? I love planting in the fall.
But
It's just,
do you ever put seeds down in the fall?
oh yeah, well, I usually wait until after November 15th, because that was just a rule that I learned when I started buying grass seeds, for the lawns and things. I bought a bunch of buffalo grass for the lawns around here, and they said don't plant before November 15th because it might germinate. And then they would not be old enough to survive the winter. So, so you want it to germinate in the spring rather than in the winter because you might not. That being said, there are seeds like, let me think, like Tradescantia ohiensis, the Ohio spiderwort. It's really pretty blue spring flower. That needs 120 days of cold to a cold weather before it will germinate, at least supposedly. So, you do want to give it time, but I'm usually waiting. Mine is usually when I'm throwing seeds down, it's more dependent on the weather during the winter than anything else, because I'm usually wanting to throw that out in front of a snowstorm. Like I'm thinking I'm going to burn first. So first it's dependent on me burning or getting something really clean. And then I don't want to just throw it out there and not have the birds come and eat it, because I've watched it happen. They just jump right on it. The one good thing about throwing it out on top of snow is that you can see where you threw it. But I don't care about that as much as I've cared about watching the birds eat it. So I'm always waiting for it to snow, like going, oh, there's a snowstorm coming. I burned. So today's the day I'm going to run out there and throw my seeds out, and the snow is going to cover them and help work it into the soil. It will work it into the soil even if it's on top of the snow. But the birds can really see it then too. That's what I think. That's just my opinion, though. Everybody else is going to tell you to throw it on top of the snow.
Thank you.
It-
Okay, if no one has any other, you mentioned two plants for shade that you were like, one was the phlox. What was the other one?
It was Pachyra obovata. So the Pachyras, there's two species, and actually I like Pachyra aria better, the way it looks better, but Pachyra obovata is the one that we actually see here. It's the one that's most native here. And pretty common too to see that in woodlands. It is awesome. It spreads, so but it has this gorgeous yellow flower. So really pretty early flower. And I love that in these shade gardens because it gives such a bright pop of color. And I mix it with phlox divaricata, which some people call it wild sweet Williams, some people call it blue phlox, some people call it woodland phlox, but it's a spring blooming phlox that we find in woodlands pretty commonly, and it has just the beautiful contrasting color to that yellow gold that the Pachyras have. So it's a pretty combination.
Great.
Hey, Patty,
Yes.
this is Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Hi. The question is sort of, and you may have touched on a little bit of this, but the life cycle of seed gathering.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm thinking is, like personally, I'm getting ready to build out a large garden, but
Mm-hmm.
regardless of that, as I acquire seeds from people, as I gather my own, etc., what's the life cycle of collecting? And then I understand there's a period that you should let them dry. And then there's a period where you can go into an airtight container for longer term storage.
Yes, yeah.
But I
I
understand
see.
if you put them in airtight too soon, they can rot because the moisture hasn't evaporated. So is there
Right.
a general rule around getting them into long-term storage?
I mean, we don't have a really good process for that kind of to that kind of detail here. If I showed you where my seeds were stored, you'd probably be appalled. It's just a bunch of paper sacks and things on a shelf in a shed. Better would be, a sealed place, where things can't get into it and light can't get into it either. But no, I don't really know. I don't know about how long it would take them to dry. And I would think that every seed would be different. For instance, if I cleaned this seed, which I'm probably not going to, this would be drier than just this. But I don't really want this seed to dry out. I want that one to be stored with its berry coating on it. Other seeds, I think for me, I'm not cleaning them either. Like the we were going to talk about purple prairie clover. I just leave those whole in a you know, in a bag. That's going to take longer to dry out than if I went ahead and scarified that, like rubbed off all of the flower parts. That's where all the moisture is going to be, in those flower parts. So I rub that off, even though they're dry, rub that off, and I sift out the seeds, which is a big process. And those little beans are they would be fine to store. They're not going to have a lot of moisture in them. They're really hard already. As long as, you know, you've let that dry out a little bit. You don't want to take it right off the plant and then do that. Because you're going to have a hard time. If I collected right now, I'm going to have a hard time rubbing that flower part off because it's not dry enough. So stuff like that, I think, is really, really dependent on which species you have. And I know that's not going to help you a whole lot, but I think you'd be safest just keeping things in paper as much as possible. You can always, you know, keep things in a refrigerator, which is going to be a more sealed storage than, you know, like I have. I've got it, you know, in an open space that isn't really as safe as something like a refrigerator for keeping them. And some things like phlox, all phlox seeds, I always put those in the refrigerator immediately. And I only learned that from Prairie Moon, because they will ship things and say that it needs to be refrigerated immediately when it's received. And that does seem to matter. I can't germinate phlox that I just leave sitting on a shelf in the heat. It just won't germinate anymore. They want to stay cool. So there's a lot of little details like that. And honestly, Mark, if you're collecting for, I wouldn't worry too much. If something is a year old, I think you can seal it up and stick it in a refrigerator in long-term storage, and it's maybe going to store better than if it stayed, you know, out in regular storage. After about 3 years, most of our seeds won't germinate anymore, though, regardless.
Okay, that helps. There's kind of two groups. One is you collect seeds for immediate
Yeah.
planting that winter, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's the group of seeds that you collect or gather that you're not ready to plant them, and you want it might be a year.
Yeah. I
And
think a
I'm
year
trying to
is
increase the germination rate of that year group.
I think the year group, you're safe with a year. A year's not too bad. But if you're I would say you'd be safer if it was in a chilled, sealed environment. Not the container sealed, but like a refrigerator sealed, rather than sitting out in a shed.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
Seeds amaze me, though. I have had 3-year-old seeds germinate, but almost never. So you'll be good for a year for sure. Any others? I don't know what time it is. I never know what time it is.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. We got 10 more minutes.
Unless no one has a question.
Unless no one has a question. Is anybody planting a garden this fall besides Mark? Mark, are you planting this fall?
Yes, large. It's interesting, and it's a large new garden, new house, new construction, and regrettably a lot of clay.
Oh,
So I'm looking at what can I do to improve that, short of waiting
yeah,
10 years to.
right.
But yes, I'm looking at a mixture of what types of seeds would do well through stratification through the winter,
Uh-huh.
what cuttings or small plants that I can put in this fall,
Uh-huh.
and what's appropriate to wait till spring. So it's kind
Yeah.
of three groups in that respect.
Yeah.
So I'm experimenting with everything, but
You
I
know,
have a
there's a
large
lot of
space, so and yes, I will take a lot of notes. So
yeah, that'd be good. Did you I'm wondering, is this a formal garden planting, or is it
no,
No, because some
It's a
things,
half acre informal.
okay. You know, there are a lot. You should come out and collect some seeds. I mean, I keep thinking of the Retivita pinnata. You guys have you ever collected it? It's tall, that's why I ask about the formal versus informal. But gray-headed coneflower is it's one of those early and so is the coreopsis. So, you know, you get these plants that are used to coming up in these new spaces, and they will come up and fill them for a period of time until the things that take longer, like the baptisias that take a longer time to come in. So, and then those other ones, they just kind of go away. They fade out of that, but they will generally come up and bloom that first year in really gross places. You wouldn't think everything grows in the driveway actually here. So I don't know. It's really interesting. That's why I don't, that amendment question, that was an interesting question to me, because so many things germinate in the driveway that it just boggles my mind that they'll do that. And they're not just the ones, you know, that you would expect. They're not just the weedy species, but some things like, trying to think of a really nice one, like Penstemon cobea loves to germinate in the driveway, which is a very nice plant. My dog is here to say hello. He's bothering Mel over here.
He's not bothering me. I have a question for Mark and you.
Uh-huh.
So somebody who does have a bigger space like that, I know we're mainly just talking about flowers right now,
Mm-hmm.
but is it also a good time to plant trees, and like, is it just as good as or better to plant trees in the fall than the spring?
I don't know that there's a good or better, a better for one or the other with trees. I think for trees, this doesn't mean don't buy a tree. I generally plant those in spring,
Okay.
and that don't know why, but I've generally planted most of those in the spring. That being said, that whole hedgerow over there was done in the fall. So there's this huge hedgerow next to the gate that was done in the fall, and it worked just great. So I think my affinity for spring is that I'm used to bare root. So when you get a bare root tree, you really just want to do that in the spring. And when you plant them in the fall, it's better if they're containerized, like they're in a container, already have some roots going. So I think that's more why I think with trees and shrubs that I think more spring. But if you got it in a container growing, I think it is fine to plant it in the fall. Just give it a little time to get established. Be a good thing. Like now, September, that'd be perfect. Any others? No? I really enjoy these. I like the questions. I really like the questions. Yes.
I would grasses too. Like if you want to plant grasses, you would do that in the fall, like an area where we have an area we want to put buffalo grass.
Well, again, that was if you're doing seed, then that you need to wait, and because you
Right.
don't want that to germinate until
Right.
next year. So if you
Mhm.
put seeds down, you're going to wait until after November 15th.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want those to pop up and then get frozen immediately, because they won't survive. Yeah.
Terry.
Terry? I think you're muted still, Terry.
What is the advantage to planting a grass seed like in November rather than April or whatever? Does it do
There's not.
Oh,
Not,
okay.
none.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just, I think that for these purposes, that's a good time because things are cleaned off. You know,
Yeah.
that generally things are very clean through the winter, especially if I've burned, things like that. It's just easier.
Okay.
Whereas
Okay.
if you get into April, stuff's already growing, you got this other stuff in the way, you get those seeds down early, and then they can be the first things to germinate along with everything else.
Okay, cool. That helps.
That was a good question, though. Yeah, there's not really much difference.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Well, I think we that was fun for me, at least.
It was.
Thanks. All right. Well, next time we'll have to think, where will we be next time? August, September, October?
October.
Oh, October's a gorgeous time. I just want to walk you guys around in the garden in October. But
Oh,
anyway,
good.
we won't do that so much. But
I want to make sure we didn't miss a question because I see something in the chat. Okay, awesome. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
thank
And then
you.
I'm gonna just wrap it up by saying a couple of things. Thank you guys all for coming. And I know Patty would never do this. I just want to remind everyone that she does site visits. So if you have questions about anything, just remember that you can go to the website and do that. And then for those of us that are on social media, please don't ever hesitate asking questions through messaging or comments, because then it reduces us having to think of ideas of stuff to post about. So please shamelessly. So even Mark, like when you're getting seeds, if you have specific questions, ask them on social media. Like we would love to answer those there. But that's all I had to say. So.
That's I just let let Mel ask those questions, say those things. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. It was great seeing you, great talking with you. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.